Oh, goody.
Alright, what's going on everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So in this one we got some new news about the balance patch dropping tomorrow. Mentioned that in the other video posted today. But we actually have an idea of what's coming, or I guess what's not coming in this balance patch. And this is really good information. I'm really glad they put this out there. So let's read what they had to say here. The new patch includes balance changes, but not to Surfer or Zabu. They started overperforming after we locked the changes in a few weeks ago. Fortunately, we now have the ability to adjust balance without a new patch, and we are planning to adjust those cards in a week or so. So this is big news, and this is from Glenn Jones, who is the principal game designer over at Second Dinner. So this is, official news. Ben Brode tweeted it out himself, quote retweet. But this is pretty big. So what I was expecting was, I didn't think they would touch Surfer or Zabu because, and pretty much for exactly the reason they say here, given that this is a bigger patch with battle mode and card rotations and other things, I figured they'd locked it in a decent amount of time ahead, especially because we got the news about this patch like over 2 weeks ago now or so. So they knew this was coming. It's probably been in the works for a bit, and obviously when you're releasing on mobile and stuff, you have to get things in a bit ahead of time. That's why we kind of saw the delay in that last patch where they had a bug at the last minute, because you have to resubmit to certification for mobile and all that. But the big news here is Surfer and Zabu, they are not getting hit tomorrow, but they will probably get hit in about a week. And I'm really happy about this. So I'm personally someone who didn't think Surfer super needed to be hit, but I can understand them going after him if they're trying to bring the power level down a little bit, which I don't think is a bad thing. I'm so happy about the Zabu thing, because the big thing I was worried about, if they missed Zabu in this patch, traditionally they've only been able to do these balance updates with a full patch, and they've been doing that about once a month or so. Which I think is fine, but if we had to go through another month of Zabu, I think I was going to lose my mind. If you haven't noticed, I have not been uploading as much or streaming nearly as much, and that's pretty much purely because of Zabu. Surfer was really strong when he came out and still is really strong, but I really liked that meta because I felt like there was a variety of good decks to play. There was more thought process going into like the different turns, and I feel like now with the existence of Zabu, it's just like, it's so simple to play and it's so ridiculously effective at what it does. It just kind of removes a lot of the fun I find from the game of having to think about the early turns and just all these non-games when you run into these Zabu mirrors and you get Zabu and they don't, or vice versa, and then it's just a total steamroll, and it's like you're flipping a coin. Who won the 50-50 to get their Zabu this game? Or you have the rare game where you both get it and you're both doing broken stuff, which is like kind of okay, but like it's just, I think Zabu is a really, really unhealthy card for the game. He looked kind of overpowered before release, but never like to judge a card too heavily before it comes out and can actually play with it. But after playing with it for a month, if there's one card that needs to be changed, it's Zabu, in my opinion. So what are they actually going to do to these cards? I've seen a few different suggestions. Now, typically, Second Dinner has gone with a lighter touch on a lot of the nerfs that they've done. They don't like deleting cards, and I think that's a good thing. I think it sucks when you have a card that people like playing with, and then because it's too powerful, it gets basically nerfed into a state where it's just not playable at all anymore. And so it doesn't seem that they do a whole lot of that, which I think is good for the game, especially in a game with a lower amount of cards available compared to other card games. Because right now we have about 200 cards in Marvel Snap, and a lot of those cards feel really pushed out by a lot of the newer stuff that came in Series 5 and the recent passes and whatnot. So I'd love to get to a place where more of these kind of cards that used to see a bit more often when everyone was kind of only in Pool 3 or before there was a Pool 4 and a Pool 5. I'd like to get back to that a little bit more, because I mean, even the Surfer meta, I love the Surfer meta, and I found it really fun to play, even though Surfer was like very prominent and powerful, but I just do not feel that way about the Zabu meta. But it's nice to hear. It's also really nice that we don't have to wait a whole month for changes. So if there is a power outlier, we aren't kind of constrained for waiting for the patch time once a month. I think that's really, really good. And I think they've shown a reasonable approach to balance where I'm not really worried about them knee-jerk nerfing too many cards that really don't need it. But what are they going to do to these cards? So given that they generally take a lighter stance, I think Zabu's going to 4. There's no world in my mind where Zabu stays a 3-cost card. It's just way too ridiculous. Giving one less turn of cheating all those 4s into play, I think will have a pretty significant difference. I think the card will still be playable. It could still even potentially be strong. I mean, I've played a bunch of Zabu decks where I didn't get Zabu till turn 4, and he still did really busted stuff. So I think if they're trying to take a light approach, the first thing they will do is probably put the card to 4 and see how that goes. And then if it's still a problem, reevaluate other changes later, kind of like they did with Leader. It's kind of funny, you know, everyone got kind of mad about the Leader change, and admittedly, the Leader change really didn't impact Leader a ton. It did a little bit, but not a ton. But it's kind of funny that the reason I think we're seeing so much less Leader is not because that card got nerfed, but because the Zabu meta just kind of pushed it out in a lot of ways, especially with the popularity of Zabu Dracula stuff, which is just absolutely awful into Leader, or Leader's awful into it. Same with Zabu Darkhawk. I think Leader's just getting pushed out a bit by the new stuff that entered. So I don't think he actually got all that much worse from their light nerf, but Zabu meta has just changed things so much. So I think they're going to put him to 4, and then if he is still a problem, maybe do something else. Surfer. Surfer is an interesting one. So there are a few different ways they could go about Surfer. The simplest one is just taking a point off of the power he buffs by. +3 is a much higher number than we're used to seeing in Marvel Snap. If we look at a lot of the other buffs in the game, like Patriot, Cerebro, Ironheart, there are a lot of +2 buffs in the game, but there really aren't a ton of +3s. And this +3 getting, you know, +3 to all your other 3s when you can get quite a lot of 3s, and mainly I think because of Brood. I think without Brood, Surfer probably wouldn't be as much of an issue. But I think there are basically 2 different paths they could take here. They could just leave Surfer as he is, but knock a point off of the power and just make him 0-3 +2 power to all your other 3s, or they could make him include himself. So you're giving less power to all your other 3s, but maybe you get to include Surfer in that. So Surfer will buff himself to a 2-3. I think that would be a pretty reasonable way to change the card, where you're making it, the go wide of the deck will be worse in terms of the amount of power it can gain, but I think it would still be a super playable and probably decently strong deck. You wouldn't be deleting the card. I've seen another suggestion which is very similar, but slightly different, where instead of Surfer buffing itself, they just give Surfer 2 power and then make it buff by 2 power. I like that change less because then it kind of ruins it for Mr. Negative, and I think Negative Surfer is a really fun deck to play, and it would be kind of sad if it... I think a change like that might just kill the deck entirely, but obviously they're not necessarily going to balance Surfer around how he does in Mr. Negative, because Negative Surfer isn't even the most popular version of Surfer, in part because Bast is really needed for that deck, and a lot of people don't have Bast. But yeah, those are the 2 changes. We're going to be getting Zabu and Surfer in about a week or so. I'm really happy about this. Those are my thoughts on how they might change the cards. We'll see soon. No information about the other cards that are being changed just yet, though it is very likely that Leader is going to get another adjustment, since they stated that a while ago, and it sounds like they locked it in a while ago when Leader was still really overperforming before all the Zabu stuff came around. So that is pretty much the only card I think is going to be a guarantee that we're going to see in this patch tomorrow, but I'll be covering the patch notes as soon as they come out tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this. Do you think Surfer and Zabu need to be nerfed? Do you think they don't need to be nerfed? How would you like to see these cards changed? Ultimately, I'm pretty happy to hear this, and I'm really happy they said something about it, because I was expecting them not to change these cards tomorrow because of locking it in early, and the thought of having to sit through the current meta another month, it was miserable. It was not a good feeling for me. Like, I want to be able to enjoy playing and streaming the game again, because I had a great time with it during the Surfer season and before the Surfer season, and so hopefully we can get back to that, because I really, really did not like Zabu, and I don't think MODOK is anywhere near powerful enough to have a meta shakeup in the way that we saw for Silver Surfer or Zabu. It's going to be much more niche, like Black Panther or Miles Morales, which is totally fine. But yeah, that's all the information here. Link in the description to the tweet if you want to see it for yourself. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. That's going to wrap it up for this video. If you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.